Harmony Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, and your dog's name, and probably what you had for breakfast that morning. Nestled between rolling green hills and a sparkling river, it was the quintessential small town. Life moved at a slower pace, people smiled genuinely, and front doors were often left unlocked. The First National Bank of Harmony Creek was more than just a financial institution, it was the heart of the community. Farmers deposited their earnings after a good harvest, local businesses secured loans to expand, and families saved for their children's futures. The bank wasn't just a building, it was a symbol of trust, stability, and shared prosperity. Old Man Fitzwilliam, who had been a teller there for 40 years, knew every customer by name and always had a peppermint candy ready for the children. Mrs. Henderson, the bank president, was a pillar of the community, volunteering at the local soup kitchen and sponsoring the annual town picnic. Even the assistant manager, Ms. Thompson, seemed like a genuinely kind and helpful person, always ready with a smile and a reassuring word. The bank itself was a modest building, a two-story brick structure with a wide, welcoming porch. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and inviting, with polished wood floors, comfortable chairs, and the gentle hum of everyday business. The walls were adorned with local artwork, showcasing the talent and creativity of the town's residents. The First National Bank of Harmony Creek wasn't just a bank, it was a part of the family. That's why, when small, almost imperceptible cracks began to appear in the bank's seemingly impenetrable facade, they were all the more unsettling. It started with a few missing dollars here and there, discrepancies that were easily dismissed as human error. Then came the slightly miscalculated interest payments, the misplaced deposit slips, and a general feeling of unease among the tellers. Nobody could quite put their finger on what was wrong, but there was a sense that something wasn't quite right in Harmony Creek's most trusted institution. The feeling was like a dark cloud slowly creeping in on a sunny day, casting a shadow over the once bright landscape of the town's financial heart. It was a subtle shift, a disquieting whisper that hinted at something more sinister lurking beneath the surface of Harmony Creek's idyllic existence. And it was about to be discovered. The missing funds, though small at first, were like tiny cracks in a dam, slowly widening and threatening to burst. A $5 bill vanished from Mrs. Gable's deposit, a simple mistake, everyone thought. Then, a $10 shortage in the ATM, chalked up to a faulty machine. But the incidents kept occurring, a drip, drip, drip of disappearing money. Old Man Fitzwilliam started double-checking his drawer at the end of each day, a habit he hadn't needed in 40 years. He'd count the bills meticulously, his brow furrowed in concentration, a small frown etched on his face. Mrs. Henderson, the bank president, spent late nights poring over spreadsheets, searching for patterns, for any explanation that would ease her growing anxiety. The tellers whispered amongst themselves, sharing their concerns in hushed tones during their lunch breaks. They spoke of misplaced deposit slips, incorrect balances, and a general feeling that something was amiss. Even Ms. Thompson, the assistant manager, seemed unusually stressed, her cheerful demeanor replaced by a strained smile and a distracted air. The unease spread beyond the bank's walls, subtly affecting the town's atmosphere. Farmers questioned their loan statements, business owners scrutinized their accounts, and families worried about their savings. The trust that had been the bedrock of Harmony Creek began to erode, replaced by suspicion and doubt. One Tuesday morning, Mr. Abernathy, a local hardware store owner, discovered a discrepancy in his business account. A small amount, only $50, but enough to raise a red flag. He marched into the bank, his face flushed with anger, demanding an explanation. Old Man Fitzwilliam, usually so calm and collected, stammered and apologized, promising to investigate. That afternoon, Mrs. Henderson called an emergency staff meeting. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense, the air thick with unspoken fears. She announced that an audit would be conducted, a thorough examination of the bank's financial records. The news was met with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Relief that the problem was finally being addressed, but apprehension about what the audit might uncover. The small cracks were now widening into gaping holes, threatening to swallow the First National Bank of Harmony Creek whole. The audit was inevitable, a necessary step to restore trust and uncover the truth. But the truth, as they were about to discover, was far more shocking and devastating than anyone could have imagined. The slow drip of missing funds was only the beginning. Amidst the growing anxiety and whispered concerns, Walter, the night janitor, went about his routine, largely unnoticed. He was a man of simple pleasures, finding satisfaction in the order and cleanliness he brought to the bank each night. Walter wasn't one for gossip or speculation. He preferred the quiet solitude of his work, the rhythmic hum of the vacuum cleaner, and the soft glow of the security lights. He'd been the night janitor at First National for 15 years, a steady presence in the otherwise empty building. He knew every nook and cranny, every creaky floorboard, every flickering light bulb. He took pride in his work, ensuring that the bank was spotless and ready for business each morning. Walter was a creature of habit. He arrived promptly at 6 p.m., signed in at the security desk, and began his rounds. He'd start with the lobby, emptying the trash cans, dusting the furniture, and polishing the brass fixtures. Then, he'd move on to the teller stations, cleaning the counters, wiping down the computers, and vacuuming the carpets. Finally, he'd tackle the offices, including Mrs. Henderson's and Ms. Thompson's. He was a quiet, observant man, with a keen eye for detail. He noticed things that others missed, the subtle changes in the environment, the misplaced objects, the unusual patterns. He wasn't nosy, but he couldn't help but absorb the details of his surroundings. One evening, while cleaning Ms. Thompson's office, Walter noticed that her computer was still on. This was unusual. Ms. Thompson was always meticulous about shutting down her computer before leaving for the day. He hesitated for a moment, then cautiously approached the desk. The screen displayed a login prompt, indicating that the computer had been restarted. Walter didn't know much about computers, but he knew enough to understand that someone had been using Ms. Thompson's computer after hours. He frowned, a sense of unease creeping into his mind. He shrugged it off, assuming that perhaps Ms. Thompson had forgotten to log out properly, and someone else had needed to use her computer briefly. But the next night, the same thing happened. Ms. Thompson's computer was on, displaying the login prompt. And the night after that, Walter began to suspect that something wasn't right. His quiet, observant nature was now piqued with curiosity and concern. He decided to pay closer attention to Ms. Thompson's computer, unaware that he was about to stumble upon the truth behind the mysterious losses plaguing Harmony Creek's beloved bank. The hum of the vacuum cleaner seemed louder now, masking the secrets hidden within the glowing computer screen. Night after night, Walter continued his silent vigil, his cleaning routine now intertwined with a growing sense of purpose. He'd dust Ms. Thompson's desk, carefully avoiding touching anything, his eyes scanning the computer screen. He began to notice a pattern. The computer wasn't just left on, it was being actively used late at night. He started keeping a small notebook in his pocket, jotting down the dates and times he observed the unusual activity. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew it wasn't right. He saw the glow of the screen reflecting in the darkened office, the faint clicks of the keyboard echoing in the otherwise silent bank. One night, he dared to peek closer. The screen displayed a window he didn't recognize, filled with numbers and codes. He saw the words, "Wire Transfer Request," at the top of the window. Walter didn't know much about finance, but he knew that wire transfers involved moving large sums of money. His heart pounded in his chest. He quickly snapped a photo of the screen with his phone, his hand trembling slightly. He knew he was taking a risk, but he felt compelled to document what he was seeing. He couldn't shake the feeling that Ms. Thompson was involved in something illegal. The next few nights were a blur of anxiety and observation. Walter continued to document the suspicious activity, gathering evidence like a detective piecing together a puzzle. He saw multiple wire transfer requests, all initiated late at night, all for varying amounts of money. He noticed that the recipient accounts were always different, and the names were unfamiliar. He started losing sleep, his mind racing with questions. Should he tell someone? Who would believe him, a simple night janitor? Would he be putting himself in danger? He knew that Ms. Thompson was well respected in the community, and he was just a humble employee. But the thought of the missing money, the unease in the town, and the potential harm being done to the bank's customers weighed heavily on his conscience. He knew he couldn't stay silent any longer. He had to do something, even if it meant risking his job and his reputation. He had to find a way to alert someone who would listen and take his concerns seriously. The weight of Harmony Creek's trust now rested, unknowingly, on Walter's shoulders. His nightly cleaning had become a mission, a quest to uncover the truth and restore peace to his beloved town. The next morning, Walter wrestled with his decision. He knew he had to tell someone, but the thought of confronting Mr. Abernathy, the branch manager, filled him with dread. Mr. Abernathy was a stern, formal man, not easily swayed by rumors or suspicions. Walter was just a janitor, would he even be taken seriously? He spent his morning shift at his other job, cleaning the local diner, his mind preoccupied with the evidence he had gathered. He kept replaying the images of the wire transfer requests in his head, the unfamiliar names, the varying amounts. He knew in his heart that something was terribly wrong. Finally, during his lunch break, he made up his mind. He couldn't live with the guilt of knowing something and doing nothing. He had to try, even if it meant facing ridicule or disbelief. He took a deep breath and walked towards the First National Bank. He waited nervously in the lobby until Mr. Abernathy was free. When he was finally called into his office, his hands were clammy, and his voice trembled slightly. "Mr. Abernathy," he began, "I need to talk to you about something important." Mr. Abernathy looked up from his paperwork, his expression stern. "Yes, Walter." "What is it?" Walter hesitated, gathering his courage. "It's about Ms. Thompson's computer," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Abernathy raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Thompson's computer? What about it?" Walter explained what he had been seeing, the late-night logins, the wire transfer requests, the unfamiliar names. He showed Mr. Abernathy the photos he had taken with his phone. Mr. Abernathy listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Walter finished, he sat in silence for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. "Walter," he said finally, "this is a very serious accusation. Ms. Thompson is a trusted employee, and I find it hard to believe that she would be involved in anything like this." Walter's heart sank. He had expected this reaction, but it still stung. "I know, sir," he said, "but I wouldn't be telling you this if I wasn't sure. I've seen it with my own eyes." Mr. Abernathy sighed. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Walter," he said, "but I need to investigate this further. I can't just accuse Ms. Thompson based on your word alone." Walter nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and disappointment. He had done his part, now it was up to Mr. Abernathy to take action. He just hoped that he would take it seriously, before it was too late. The fate of Harmony Creek's bank, and its people, hung in the balance. True to his word, Mr. Abernathy began a discreet investigation. He couldn't shake off Walter's accusations entirely, the photos were compelling, but he also couldn't bring himself to fully suspect Ms. Thompson. She had been a loyal employee for over 10 years, always punctual, always professional, always willing to go the extra mile. He started by reviewing Ms. Thompson's recent transactions, carefully examining the wire transfer requests. He noticed a few that seemed slightly out of the ordinary, larger amounts than usual, or transfers to unfamiliar accounts. But he tried to rationalize them, attributing them to legitimate business transactions or perhaps a simple clerical error. He spoke to some of the other tellers, subtly probing their opinions of Ms. Thompson. They all spoke highly of her, describing her as kind, helpful, and dedicated. Nobody had noticed anything unusual about her behavior, other than perhaps a bit of stress lately. Mr. Abernathy also checked the bank's security logs, looking for any record of unauthorized access to Ms. Thompson's computer. But the logs showed nothing out of the ordinary. He even stayed late one night, pretending to work on paperwork, but secretly observing Ms. Thompson as she prepared to leave for the day. She seemed perfectly normal, locking her computer and wishing him a good evening. The more Mr. Abernathy investigated, the more conflicted he became. He wanted to believe in Ms. Thompson's innocence, but the evidence Walter had presented was difficult to ignore. He felt trapped between his loyalty to a trusted employee and his responsibility to protect the bank and its customers. He considered confronting Ms. Thompson directly, but he worried about the consequences of making a false accusation. He didn't want to ruin her reputation or damage her career based on mere suspicion. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. The audit was looming, and the discrepancies in the bank's accounts were becoming more pronounced. Mr. Abernathy knew he had to make a decision, but he was paralyzed by doubt and fear. He longed for a clear answer, a definitive proof that would either exonerate Ms. Thompson or confirm his worst fears. But the truth, it seemed, was determined to remain hidden, shrouded in a veil of uncertainty. Harmony Creek held its breath, unaware of the internal battle raging within its bank manager, a battle that would ultimately determine the fate of their community's financial heart. Sensing Mr. Abernathy's reluctance, Walter felt a renewed sense of urgency. He realized that if he wanted to protect the bank, he couldn't rely solely on Mr. Abernathy's investigation. He needed to gather more concrete evidence, something that would leave no room for doubt. He decided to intensify his surveillance of Ms. Thompson's computer. He continued to document the dates and times of the suspicious logins, meticulously recording every detail in his notebook. He also started paying closer attention to the specific wire transfer requests, trying to decipher the patterns and understand where the money was going. He learned that he could access a limited transaction history on the computer, showing the recent wire transfers initiated by Ms. Thompson. He started taking screenshots of these transactions, carefully capturing the recipient account numbers, the amounts transferred, and the dates and times. He knew he was walking a dangerous line, potentially crossing into illegal territory. But he felt justified in his actions, driven by a strong sense of responsibility and a desire to protect the community he had come to care for. He also realized that he needed to be more discreet. He couldn't risk being caught by Ms. Thompson or anyone else. He started varying his cleaning routine, spending less time in Ms. Thompson's office and being more careful about his movements. One night, he discovered something particularly alarming. He found a document on Ms. Thompson's computer outlining a plan to transfer a large sum of money to an offshore account. The document was password protected, but Walter managed to guess the password after several attempts. The password was Harmony, a cruel irony that sent a chill down his spine. He quickly took photos of the document, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the smoking gun, the undeniable proof of Ms. Thompson's guilt. He now had enough evidence to convince anyone that she was embezzling funds from the bank. He knew he had to act quickly. He couldn't wait any longer for Mr. Abernathy to complete his investigation. He needed to present this new evidence immediately, before Ms. Thompson had a chance to cover her tracks or transfer the money. The stakes were higher than ever, and Walter knew that the future of Harmony Creek's bank, and its community, rested in his hands. His quiet nights of cleaning had transformed into a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, with the fate of a small town hanging in the balance. The next day at the bank was filled with a palpable tension. The auditors had arrived, and their presence cast a long shadow over every transaction, every conversation, every movement. Mrs. Henderson, usually so composed, looked drawn and anxious. Even old man Fitzwilliam seemed more flustered than usual, fumbling with the deposit slips and miscounting the cash. The atmosphere of unease had reached a fever pitch, and the news of the impending audit had spread like wildfire throughout Harmony Creek. People were worried, their savings were at stake, and the future of their beloved bank hung in the balance. That afternoon, a major incident occurred. A local farmer, Mr. Johnson, discovered that a significant portion of his savings was missing from his account. He stormed into the bank, his face red with anger, demanding an explanation. The tellers tried to calm him down, but he was inconsolable. Mr. Abernathy was called in to mediate the situation. He listened patiently to Mr. Johnson's complaints, assuring him that the matter would be investigated thoroughly. But Mr. Johnson was not satisfied. He demanded his money back immediately, threatening to withdraw all of his funds and close his account. The incident caused a major disruption in the bank. Other customers became alarmed, questioning their own balances and demanding reassurance. A sense of panic began to spread, threatening to trigger a full-blown bank run. Mr. Abernathy knew he had to act quickly. He couldn't afford to lose the trust of the community, not now, not ever. He made a difficult decision. He authorized the immediate reimbursement of Mr. Johnson's missing funds, using the bank's own reserves. The move calmed Mr. Johnson down, but it also raised serious questions. Where did the missing money go? And how could the bank afford to simply replace it without a proper investigation? The incident forced Mr. Abernathy to confront the severity of the situation. He could no longer ignore the mounting evidence, the growing discrepancies, and the increasing unease. He knew that Walter was right, something was terribly wrong, and he had to do everything in his power to uncover the truth. He made a decision. He would meet with Walter again that evening, to review the new evidence and discuss a plan of action. He knew that he couldn't solve this problem alone. He needed Walter's help, his insight, and his unwavering commitment to justice. The future of Harmony Creek's bank, and its community, now depended on their unlikely partnership. The audit suddenly seemed less important than finding the thief within their walls. That evening, Walter arrived at the bank, his heart pounding in his chest. He clutched the envelope containing the photos of the offshore account plan, his hands clammy with sweat. He felt a mixture of fear and determination, knowing that tonight could be the night that everything changed. Mr. Abernathy was waiting for him in his office, his face etched with worry. He greeted Walter with a somber nod, ushering him inside and closing the door behind them. "Walter," he said, his voice low and serious, "thank you for coming. I need to apologize. I should have listened to you sooner." Walter nodded, relieved that Mr. Abernathy was finally taking him seriously. "It's okay, sir," he said. "What matters now is that we do something about it." Mr. Abernathy sighed. "The auditors have uncovered some serious discrepancies," he said. "It's worse than I thought. We're talking about a significant amount of money, Walter. Enough to bankrupt the bank." Walter's eyes widened in shock. "How much?" he asked. "Hundreds of thousands of dollars," Mr. Abernathy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "And it's all pointing to Ms. Thompson." Walter handed Mr. Abernathy the envelope. "I have proof," he said. "This is a plan she created to transfer the money to an offshore account." Mr. Abernathy opened the envelope and examined the photos. His face grew pale as he read the document, his eyes scanning the details of the offshore account and the planned transfer. "This is incredible," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "This is all the evidence we need." They spent the next few hours poring over the evidence, piecing together the puzzle of Ms. Thompson's embezzlement. They reviewed the wire transfer requests, the recipient accounts, and the dates and times of the suspicious logins. They discovered a pattern. Ms. Thompson had been systematically siphoning money from the bank over the past several months, transferring it to a series of dummy accounts before ultimately funneling it to the offshore account. They also realized that she was planning to make a final, large transfer within the next few days, effectively draining the bank of its remaining reserves. Mr. Abernathy knew that they had to act quickly. They couldn't wait any longer. They had to confront Ms. Thompson and stop her before she could complete her plan. The future of Harmony Creek's bank, and its community, depended on it. The quiet partnership between the manager and the janitor was now the last line of defense against financial ruin. The next morning, Mr. Abernathy arrived at the bank earlier than usual. He instructed the tellers to delay Ms. Thompson's arrival, claiming that he needed to discuss some urgent matters with them before she arrived. When Ms. Thompson finally arrived, she found Mr. Abernathy waiting for her in his office, his expression grave. Walter stood silently in the corner, his presence adding to the tension in the room. "Ms. Thompson," Mr. Abernathy began, his voice firm but controlled, "we need to talk about some serious discrepancies that have been discovered in the bank's accounts." Ms. Thompson's face paled slightly, but she maintained her composure. "What kind of discrepancies?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Abernathy laid out the evidence, presenting the wire transfer requests, the offshore account plan, and the suspicious login activity. He watched Ms. Thompson closely, observing her reaction. At first, she denied everything, claiming that the evidence was fabricated and that she was being framed. She accused Walter of planting the evidence, suggesting that he had a personal vendetta against her. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice rising in anger. "I would never do anything to harm this bank. I've dedicated my life to this community." But as Mr. Abernathy continued to present the evidence, her composure began to crumble. She started to fidget, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Finally, when Mr. Abernathy presented the photos of the offshore account plan, she broke down. She slumped into a chair, her face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. "It's true," she said, her voice muffled by her hands. "I did it. I embezzled the money." Mr. Abernathy and Walter exchanged a look of shock and sadness. They had hoped that Ms. Thompson would be able to explain the situation, that there would be some innocent explanation for her actions. But now, the truth was out in the open, and the reality of her betrayal was devastating. "Why, Ms. Thompson?" Mr. Abernathy asked, his voice filled with disappointment. "Why would you do this?" Ms. Thompson looked up, her eyes red and swollen with tears. "I was desperate," she said. "I made some bad decisions, and I got into debt. I didn't know what else to do." The facade had crumbled, revealing the desperation and the broken trust underneath. "What kind of debts?" Mr. Abernathy asked, his voice laced with a mixture of anger and pity. Ms. Thompson hesitated, then confessed that she had a gambling problem. It had started small, with innocent bets on sporting events, but it had quickly spiraled out of control. She had lost a significant amount of money, and she had borrowed more and more to try to recoup her losses. "I was so stupid," she said, her voice choked with sobs. "I thought I could win it all back, but I just kept losing more and more. I didn't know what to do. I was desperate." She explained that she had initially intended to borrow the money temporarily, intending to repay it as soon as she won big. But her losses continued to mount, and she had become trapped in a cycle of debt and desperation. "I know what I did was wrong," she said. "I know I betrayed your trust, and I betrayed the trust of this community. I'm so sorry." Mr. Abernathy sighed. He felt a pang of sympathy for Ms. Thompson, but he also knew that he couldn't condone her actions. She had committed a serious crime, and she had to be held accountable. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice firm but compassionate, "I have no choice but to report this to the authorities. What you did was illegal, and it has caused significant harm to this bank and its customers." Ms. Thompson nodded, accepting her fate. "I understand," she said. "I'll cooperate fully with the investigation." Mr. Abernathy called the local police, informing them of Ms. Thompson's confession and requesting their assistance. The police arrived within minutes, taking Ms. Thompson into custody. As she was led away, she turned to Walter, her eyes filled with remorse. "I'm sorry, Walter," she said. "I know I let you down." Walter nodded silently, his heart heavy with sadness. He had never wanted to see Ms. Thompson punished, but he knew that justice had to be served. The authorities began their investigation, working to recover the stolen funds and assess the full extent of Ms. Thompson's embezzlement. The news of her arrest spread quickly throughout Harmony Creek, sending shockwaves through the community. The once unshakable trust in their bank had been shattered. The small town was about to face a harsh reality. In the days that followed, Harmony Creek struggled to come to terms with the news of Ms. Thompson's betrayal. The First National Bank, once a symbol of trust and stability, was now viewed with suspicion and doubt. Customers lined up to withdraw their savings, fearing that the bank would collapse. Mrs. Henderson worked tirelessly to reassure the community, holding town hall meetings and issuing public statements. She vowed to do everything in her power to recover the stolen funds and restore the bank's reputation. The authorities launched a full-scale investigation, tracing the stolen money and working to recover it from the offshore account. They were able to recover a significant portion of the funds, but a considerable amount remained missing. Walter, once an invisible presence in the bank, was now hailed as a hero. People stopped him on the street, thanking him for his courage and his dedication. He was uncomfortable with the attention, but he appreciated the recognition. Mr. Abernathy, too, was praised for his leadership in uncovering the truth and bringing Ms. Thompson to justice. He worked tirelessly to restore the bank's operations and rebuild the community's trust. Despite the efforts of Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Abernathy, the First National Bank of Harmony Creek was deeply wounded. The embezzlement had shaken the community to its core, leaving a lasting scar on its collective psyche. Many customers lost faith in the bank, choosing to move their savings to larger, more established institutions. Local businesses struggled to secure loans, and the town's economy suffered. Harmony Creek was no longer the idyllic, trusting community it once had been. The embezzlement had exposed a darker side of human nature, shattering the illusion of innocence and leaving the town grappling with a newfound sense of vulnerability. But amidst the darkness, there was also hope. The community rallied together, supporting each other and working to rebuild what had been lost. They learned a valuable lesson about vigilance and accountability, realizing that even in the most trusting communities, it was important to remain watchful and to hold people accountable for their actions. The town would never be quite the same, but the spirit of Harmony Creek remained, a testament to the resilience and determination of its people. The betrayal had tested them, but it had also strengthened their resolve to rebuild and to create a better future. As Harmony Creek began the long road to recovery, Walter found himself grappling with the weight of his newfound fame. He was no longer just the quiet night janitor, he was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the most ordinary person could make a difference. He received numerous awards and accolades, but he remained humble and grounded. He continued to work at the bank, cleaning the floors and emptying the trash cans, just as he always had. He also became an advocate for financial literacy, speaking at local schools and community centers, teaching people about the importance of saving money and managing their finances responsibly. He wanted to help others avoid the mistakes that Ms. Thompson had made. Mr. Abernathy, too, emerged as a strong leader, guiding the bank through the crisis and implementing new safeguards to prevent future embezzlement. He instituted stricter internal controls, increased security measures, and implemented mandatory financial training for all employees. Mrs. Henderson worked tirelessly to restore the bank's reputation, reaching out to customers and assuring them that their savings were safe. She also launched a community outreach program, offering financial assistance to families who had been affected by the embezzlement. Slowly but surely, Harmony Creek began to heal. The First National Bank regained its footing, and the town's economy started to recover. People began to trust again, and the sense of community was restored. Ms. Thompson's trial drew national attention, with reporters from all over the country descending on Harmony Creek. She pleaded guilty to embezzlement and was sentenced to several years in prison. In her final statement to the court, she expressed her deep remorse for her actions, apologizing to the community and to her former colleagues. She vowed to use her time in prison to reflect on her mistakes and to make amends for the harm she had caused. Walter attended the sentencing, his heart filled with a mixture of sadness and forgiveness. He knew that Ms. Thompson had made a terrible mistake, but he also believed that she deserved a second chance. As he left the courthouse, he looked up at the sky, taking a deep breath of fresh air. He knew that the scars of the embezzlement would remain for a long time, but he also knew that Harmony Creek was strong enough to overcome this challenge and to emerge stronger than ever before. His quiet act of vigilance had changed the course of a town's history. Years passed. The First National Bank of Harmony Creek, though forever changed, remained a cornerstone of the community. New faces joined the staff, bringing fresh ideas and renewed energy. The security measures were tighter, the internal controls more robust, and the culture of vigilance deeply ingrained. Mr. Abernathy eventually retired, passing the torch to a new generation of leadership. He remained a respected figure in the town, often seen strolling through the park or attending local events. He never forgot the lessons he had learned from Walter, and he often spoke of the importance of trusting one's instincts and standing up for what is right. Mrs. Henderson continued to serve as the bank's president, guiding it through the ever-changing landscape of the financial world. She never lost her passion for serving the community, and she remained a tireless advocate for financial literacy and economic opportunity. And Walter? He continued to work as the night janitor, a quiet, steady presence in the bank. He was no longer just an employee, he was a friend, a confidant, and a symbol of hope. He never sought fame or fortune, but he embraced his role as a community leader. He continued to speak at local schools, sharing his story and encouraging young people to be observant, to be courageous, and to be true to themselves. He also kept in touch with Ms. Thompson, visiting her in prison and offering her words of encouragement. He believed that everyone deserved a second chance, and he hoped that she would eventually be able to rebuild her life and make amends for her mistakes. One evening, as Walter was cleaning Ms. Thompson's former office, he noticed something different. The computer, which had once been a source of so much turmoil, was now replaced by a new, state-of-the-art model. He smiled, realizing that the bank, like the community, had moved on. The scars of the past remained, but they had also learned from their mistakes and emerged stronger and more resilient. As he finished his cleaning, he looked out the window at the town of Harmony Creek, its lights twinkling in the darkness. He knew that the community would never be quite the same, but he also knew that it would always be a special place, a place where people cared for each other, a place where even a humble night janitor could make a difference. The hum of his vacuum cleaner echoed through the empty bank, a sound of peace and hope in a town forever marked, but never broken. The First National Bank of Harmony Creek stood as a testament to resilience, its brick facade weathered but strong. The wide, welcoming porch, once a symbol of simple trust, now also represented a commitment to transparency and accountability. The polished wood floors gleamed, reflecting not only the dedication to cleanliness, but also the hard work of rebuilding trust. Old man Fitzwilliam, long retired, would often visit the bank, sharing stories of the past with the younger tellers. He always made sure to mention Walter, the quiet janitor who had saved the day, reminding everyone that heroes could come from the most unexpected places. Mrs. Henderson, though no longer the bank president, remained an active member of the community, volunteering her time and sharing her wisdom. She often spoke of the importance of learning from mistakes and never taking trust for granted. And Walter? He continued his nightly routine, his presence a constant reminder of the importance of vigilance. He was no longer just a janitor, he was a guardian, a protector, a symbol of hope for Harmony Creek. He still kept a small notebook in his pocket, not to record suspicious activity, but to jot down ideas for his financial literacy presentations. He continued to visit Ms. Thompson in prison, offering her forgiveness and encouraging her to rebuild her life. One night, as he was cleaning the lobby, a young girl approached him, her eyes wide with admiration. "Mr. Walter," she said, "I want to be just like you when I grow up." Walter smiled, his heart filled with warmth. "That's very kind of you," he said. "But you don't need to be like me. Just be yourself, be observant, be courageous, and always stand up for what is right." He watched as the girl skipped away, her laughter echoing through the empty bank. He knew that the future of Harmony Creek was in good hands, that the lessons of the past had been learned, and that the community was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As he finished his work, he turned off the lights and locked the doors, leaving the bank in darkness. But he knew that the spirit of Harmony Creek would continue to shine brightly, a beacon of hope and resilience in a world that often seemed uncertain and unpredictable. The town had learned that even in the most trusting of communities, a little vigilance can go a long way. And Walter, the quiet night janitor, would always be remembered as the hero who had saved Harmony Creek. The end.